For decades now, families have gathered at Omaha's Union Station to celebrate the holiday season.
First Alert 6's Brenna Kiefner takes us inside a tradition where those childhood memories become family legacies.
The glow of a towering Christmas tree, the laughter of children gliding across a sock skating pond, and the timeless magic of Santa's cabin. For Scott Eastman, these memories aren't new. They're echoes of his own childhood.
You know, it was kind of the monument representation of what Christmas was supposed to be to me as a kid.
That feeling, it's been passed down for nearly a century. Christmas at Union Station started in 1931. Back then, Union Pacific filled these halls with holiday celebrations.
You cannot talk about the history of Union Station without talking about the holidays.
When the train stopped running, the tradition didn't. In 1975, the museum brought it back, and families like Scott's kept coming. Now he brings his daughter to stand where he once stood to feel what he once felt.
Now, as a father of young children, my daughter has sang here, so it's incredible.
It's not about the decorations or the displays.
You know, I gotta say, it's nothing special, it's nothing sophisticated. It's just seeing that awe and seeing the kids rush in and stop dead in their tracks and just look at this towering tree and see that kind of emotional moment that they're having.
The same magic, the same wonder, just through different eyes. A reminder that the best traditions aren't the ones we preserve, they're the ones we pass on. In Omaha, Brenna Kiefner, First Alert 6.